What is an above-guideline rent increase? In Ontario, landlords must follow strict guidelines set by the Residential Tenancies Act, often referred to as the RTA, when increasing rent. Typically, annual rent increases are capped by the province's rent control guidelines. However, landlords may apply for an above-guideline increase, or AGI, if they have incurred significant costs for capital expenditures, increased taxes, or security costs. The L5 form is used to submit this application to the Ontario Landlord and Tenant Board, known as the LTB. Be aware, the form can be onerous, and it takes some understanding and effort to be successful. This video describes the process, but is not legal advice. Step-by-step process for completing the L5 application. Step 1. Determine eligibility. Before filing an L5, confirm that your rental unit qualifies for an above-guideline increase. AGI applications can be submitted for one or more of the following reasons. Capital expenditures, which include substantial repairs, replacements, or renovations to the building that benefit the property for at least 5 years. Property taxes, which means a significant increase in property taxes. And operating costs for security services, which covers new or increased costs for security services. What are capital expenditures? Capital expenditures are works that were needed and not cosmetic in nature. For example, a roof replacement, elevator replacement, or the installation of an accessible ramp into the building would be considered a capital expenditure. While the repair of asphalt, installation of landscaping, or upgrading the front entry of a small building would not likely qualify for an AGI. Eligible capital expenditure work can include work to protect or restore the physical integrity of the residential complex, to maintain it, to provide access for persons with disabilities, or to promote energy or water conservation, etc. Capital expenditures must be completed within an 18-month period that ends 90 days before the date of the first rent increase requested in the landlord's application. The work must also be fully paid for before the application is filed, other than any required construction lien holdbacks. For example, if the first rent increase requested in the application is September 1, 2024, the landlord must have completed the work by June 3, 2024. Also, the landlord cannot claim a capital expenditure that was completed before December 3, 2022. What is a significant increase in property taxes? If there has been an extraordinary increase in the cost of municipal taxes and charges for the complex in the previous calendar year, an AGI may be appropriate. Municipal taxes and charges include taxes charged to a landlord by a municipality, other charges levied on a landlord by a municipality, taxes levied on a landlord's property in unorganized territory, and education taxes. An increase in the cost of municipal taxes and charges is extraordinary if it is greater than the annual rent increase guideline plus 50% of the guideline. Use the guideline for the year in which the first intended rent increase for the units covered by the application will take effect. The formula to determine if the increases are significant is as follows. An increase in the cost of municipal taxes and charges is extraordinary if it is greater than the annual rent increase guideline plus 50% of the guideline. Use the guideline for the year in which the first intended rent increase for the units covered by the application will take effect. If the guideline is 2.5%, then the guideline plus 50% of the guideline is 2.5% plus 1.25%, which equals 3.75%. If the landlord's taxes have gone up by more than 3.75%, then this increase is extraordinary. What about security services? If a new security system has been installed or your operating costs for security services have increased, then an AGI may be an option. Security services must be provided by persons who are not your employees to qualify for an AGI increase. The increase must be large enough to justify going beyond the annual rent increase guideline, which is set by the government each year. For example, in 2024, the guideline is 2.5%, meaning you can apply for an AGI if you need to increase rent beyond this percentage. Step 2. Collect supporting documents. Gather all documentation that justifies the need for an AGI. For capital expenditures, you'll need receipts, invoices, and contractor agreements that clearly show the costs incurred. For utilities and property tax increases, you must provide billing statements showing the difference between current and previous rates. Key documents include invoices and receipts as proof of cost for capital expenditures, property tax bills showing the increase in taxes, security bills documenting installation or increases, capital work contracts if applicable, and photographs of the completed work to demonstrate the necessity and value of the capital improvements. Step 3. Fill out the L5 application. The L5 application form is available on the Landlord and Tenant Board's website. It consists of several sections: applicant information, where you provide your name, mailing address, and the details of the rental property; reason for the application, where you indicate the primary reason for the rent increase, whether it is due to capital expenditures, increased utility costs, or property tax hikes; work completed, where for capital expenditures you describe the repairs, renovations, or replacements made to the property, including details on why the work was necessary and how it benefits the tenants; and rent increase calculation, where you provide calculations to show how much rent needs to be increased based on the costs incurred. Step 4. Calculate the rent increase. To calculate the rent increase, you will need to determine how the incurred costs relate to the increase in rent. For capital expenditures, where the costs are amortized over a period of time based on their expected lifespan, usually 10 to 20 years, and only a percentage of the total expenditure is considered annually when calculating rent increases. For example, if you spent $50,000 on a new roof and the expected lifespan is 10 years, you would amortize the cost over 10 years, meaning $5,000 per year can be used in your calculation. Increased property taxes, where you compare property tax costs from previous years to new bills, and the difference between the old and new amounts is added to the allowable rent increase. Total increase, you add up the amounts calculated from capital expenditures, security cost increases, and property tax increases, and the total can be added to the annual guideline rent increase. More than one unit? Divide the total increase by the number of rental units affected to find the per unit increase. Read the AGI L5 application and instructions a few times before tackling it. This is a difficult form and process which needs great care and attention to complete it correctly. With good records and some determination, the average landlord can complete an AGI application, though don't discount the value of using an experienced professional for assistance. Step 5. Submit the application. Once the L5 form is complete and your supporting documents are ready, submit your application. You can do this by online submission through the Ontario Landlord and Tenant Board portal, in person by visiting your local LTB office, or by mail by sending the completed form and all documentation to the LTB. There is a filing fee associated with the L5 application. Be sure to check the current fee on the LTB website. Step 6. Notify the tenants. Important. You must file Form L5 no later than 90 days before the effective date of the first intended rent increase you refer to in your application. Step 7. Attend the hearing. After submitting the application, a hearing will be scheduled where both you and your tenants can present evidence and arguments. The LTB will review the case and make a decision on the rent increase. Be prepared to explain the necessity of the expenditures and justify the rent increase. It's not easy, but it is possible. Applying for an above guideline increase, using the L5 form, allows landlords to increase rent beyond the government's annual guideline when they have incurred significant costs related to capital improvements, new security services, or property tax increases. Landlords can navigate the L5 process with the Ontario Landlord and Tenant Board to seek approval for an above guideline increase, but it does take time. We recommend you seek legal advice for your specific circumstances as appropriate. Like and subscribe for more helpful content.